Welcome everybody to the Lock On podcast, first episode, number one. And we picked an incredible day to do our first episode. The PlayStation 5 release date, price has finally been put out there, and there was a ton of other stuff that was also shown as well that we'll get to talking about. But let's just jump right into this, and let's get some initial reactions to what people were wanting the most out of this event was a price point and a release date. And Sean, we're going to start with you. What were your initial reactions to, let's start with the price.
Both prices were exactly what I expected. I've been saying for a long time, I didn't think Sony was going to do a half price point of $349.90 or $99 $449 for the digital one. I figured they would eat the cost on that just to make it afford, so they would have a $399 console because they know that that's a good price point. And I didn't expect them to go over $499 for the. I just don't think even with inflation, I just didn't think they were ever going to go back to a $600 console. Not yet.
I'm right there with you. It was one of those things for me. I looked at the price. I heard the rumors that there was some rumblings out there that they were going to hit that $600 price point. And I just thought to myself, there's no way.
Yeah.
Sony has had many screw ups in their company history, especially with PlayStation. But I feel like all of their mistakes they've made, they've never repeated the mistake again. And that PS3 reveal, I still remember it. And they dropped that $599 US, and everyone's hearts just stopped. It was like, what is going on? There was just no way that anyone was going to go for it. But
the funny thing is, it was worth every penny technically, but just people were not going to spend that.
Yeah, the technology it was a different type of technology, and just developers hated it.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially considering how hard that console was reportedly to make games for, how hard it was to make games for. It's just,
Yeah, for me, and then kind of bringing it back around to the PS5 with the price, it's really interesting to see them go slightly more expensive than the Series X or Series S, excuse me. But the fact that you get the same amount of power as the regular disc-based one, I feel like because Sony is the market leader and because Sony and PlayStation have that brand recognition, I just feel like it's a winning combination. I think people have zero problem paying that extra $50, $100 to get, a more powerful console.
Yeah, I really think the Series S is being positioned to be a secondary console, which is fine. A lot of people have two consoles or more. I always did. Ever since the Xbox came out. Well, not since it came out. Since I got Xbox, I got it when Splinter Cell came out. I've always been a two console house. It's just I usually wait. I usually get one before the other and then wait. This gen I got PS4 at launch and then got an Xbox for Titanfall. And then the same thing's going to happen here. I'm going to get PS5 at launch, and then when they put out a game on that level that I feel like I need to play,
and I'll
get a Series X.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I feel like the Series S is positioned as a secondary console. Now, Tim, in terms of looking at the date, were you shocked by the date that it's so close to the Xbox? Were you thinking that maybe it was going to be a little farther apart, maybe more into December?
No, I think Sony has seen what happens if they give Xbox enough time or if they let themselves be too separate in time. I don't think that they have enough confidence going into this. I mean, still, even after Xbox dropped their pricing, something like 70% of different polls were coming in, like people saying 70% of their readers were still planning on getting the PlayStation no matter what price or what timetable. So I think for them, it doesn't matter when it came out relative to the Xbox. And they were ready for the 12th, so they're going for the 12th.
Yeah.
I think the 12th, just sorry to interject, but I think the 12th is smart too because Call of Duty comes out on the 13th. And you don't want to give Xbox runway for people to be like, I'm getting Call of Duty on because it's available on Xbox now. So getting out the day before Call of Duty comes out, which is basically you're making Call of Duty a launch title.
For sure.
Was smart. And I would not at all be surprised if Activision pulled a Ubisoft and bumped the date up a day.
Yeah.
You know,
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah,
so
that
it
Call
is
of Duty
actually
looks
the
great
launch.
too.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Yeah, it looks sweet.
So I guess obviously the PlayStation, like I said before, date and price was the main point of what people wanted to see this for. But there were also a lot of surprises, and I am right here telling you, I am definitely an Xbox fan at heart, but you just never see these shows with these kind of bombs except for Sony. And I know Nintendo's had some as well, but it just feels like Sony's so consistent at dropping these, wow, I didn't think this was coming moments. For me, just rapid fire, some of the smaller games that were just trailers. Obviously, the Hogwarts Legacy, being a huge Harry Potter fan, it's crazy to me that we've gone this long into video games being a mainstream thing, and they make huge dollars that Harry Potter just has never had an RPG. I just feel like it's an instant win, and I think people are going to buy it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not even a Harry Potter fan in the slightest. I've seen the movies once, and I don't even think I finished the last one. But that game looks really good. And I have one of my best friends is really into Harry Potter, and I sent him thing. I was like, "This looks fucking really good," and he was excited for it too because he's more of a casual gamer. He's not like he'll play like certain games, but he's not like he doesn't ingest it like this. He doesn't follow games Twitter. He wouldn't ever be in a chat talking about video games, but that really got him interested. And and it's just no brainer not having it be tied to the mainstream characters. You create your own character and go into this world, and it looks gorgeous. So I'm really excited. I'm actually legitimately excited for that game.
Yep.
I remember when it leaked a few years ago. I thought, man, that's a great idea. I have no affiliation with Harry Potter at all. I've never even seen the movies. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a really sweet idea, the wand variations and customizing.
Yeah, there's just so much with the world, I feel like, that you can do with it. Because it is like, obviously the books are there, but as big as Harry Potter is, if you kind of get into some of the bigger franchises like a Star Wars, like a Lord of the Rings, there's so many off-branching stories and so many like dates and times that you can't touch because it's already been told, because they're deeper lore. With Harry Potter, it's like you've got Harry Potter, you've got the Fantastic Beasts, you've got the little lore that goes on Pottermore.com every once in a while, but you can essentially choose a time that's 200 years in the future, 200 years in the past, and no one's touched it. So you can do whatever you want there, which I think is huge. And I don't think you see that a lot of the time when it comes to already established media and video games. I find that's something that's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think with Harry Potter, you're right. It's definitely more of a blue water franchise than a Star Wars or some of the other real big epic stories that every single detail for like thousands of years in either direction has been told. And Harry Potter, that's just not the case. I will say I am not a fan of the Destiny model of RPG. And some of that gave me some Destiny vibes, like the Hogwarts is the social hub, and then you go off into the magic world to do like cave dives and dungeon quests and stuff.
Yeah.
And if it's that model, I'm not sure I'd enjoy it that much. I got some of those vibes. They didn't outright say that, of course, but I got some of those vibes. But if it's more like a Skyrim RPG, just general open world RPG, or Fables maybe, then I think it looks fantastic. But I did get, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be like Marvel or like Destiny.
100%, and that's something that's kind of following the trend of those type of games. So we'll have to see. Honestly, it's just our first trailer. Just some really quick other ones before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of the games. Call of Duty obviously looked good, for sure. I like that they added the executions that it looks like you can do, and then PlayStation getting the alpha. Which again is just kind of your typical Activision will monetize or anything that they can do with Call of Duty. So I'm not surprised. But it's good. It's good that they're able to do this a little earlier this year.
It was good to see Mason back in action with the bandana and everything. Oh, man.
Resident Evil 8, again, very, very excited. I was one of the Resident Evil people that dove in. I played 4 a little bit. I played 5 a little bit, but I really dove in with 7 for the first time. And I enjoyed it just because I didn't see it as a Resident Evil game because I'm not super into the lore. I saw it more of just a horror game, and that's what I enjoyed about it. I don't know,
Yeah,
Sean,
I
did you have a chance to play
I
it?
love. I have not. I didn't play. I'm okay. This is where old man shouts at cloud. I I have a certain thing that I want and expect from Resident Evil, and it being first person is not that.
Yeah.
So if it's not a third person like Resident Evil game, I have no interest in it whatsoever. So I haven't played 7. Somebody bought it for me and I started playing it. I'm like, I don't want to play this. I just don't. It's not even that I have anything against. It's just it doesn't feel like Resident Evil to me. That's why I was so into like Resident Evil remake, 2 remake, and I'd like 3. I was a little disappointed at its length, but I played the shit out of it. I almost got the platinum, but that last boss is fucking like rage inducing.
Exactly, and I feel like with Resident Evil, it was definitely one of those game franchises. With after 4, 5 came out, a lot of people disliked it. 6 came out, no, there was not really a lot of fanfare behind it, and then they had the Revelation series, and it's just kind of gone on. And I feel like Capcom, I can't say it. Capcom came to the table and said, we have an idea of just kind of basically a soft reboot and see if we can and we'll make it different. And I feel like for Sean, like you're the old school Resident Evil. That was what they had to take issue with. Essentially, they had to balance the pros and the cons because they must have known going into development of, hey, we make this first person. A lot of the hardcore fans are going to like it, but we can maybe attract this new audience that is really into the first person horror games that were big at the time when Resident Evil 7 the trailer came out. It was all Amnesia. I'm trying to remember the other one, when the Insane Asylum, and there was a lot of
Outlast.
Yes.
Outlast, and
those were very big at the
Amnesia.
time.
Dead Space was around. Was kind of.
No, he's talking about like the first person ones though, like the Outlast.
Oh, specifically,
like
okay,
and stuff like that.
And I got to be honest.
They went on that trend.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I played. I was a little too young to be able to enjoy Resident Evil 4 when it came out. It would have scared me too much. I really enjoyed Resident Evil 5, but I think that I'm in a weird place with the series because I think after 6 was such a disappointment for people, and it was just kind of a lot of people just think that's a bad game. They had to do something to revitalize the series. They can't let Resident Evil go. It's the closest they have to something like a Final Fantasy, some long-running action series or something of that nature. And
that's all right. And that kind of just to kind of move it along, just because I'm looking at the time here, to dive into what you just said, actually mention Final Fantasy. Well, Final Fantasy 16 was finally revealed, and I will be honest, it's again a series for me that I have never really got into. I know, even all of my friends that are in their late 20s that always say, "Oh, you didn't play on the PS1 when you were a kid?" And no, I didn't. Did either of you really into Final Fantasy?
You want to go first?
A lot of Final Fantasy adjacent games. I've never played one of the main lines. I watched my brother play through 9 when it came out. That's the one with underwater soccer, right? Math soccer.
10.
Okay, so yeah, I watched my older brother play through 10 when it came out, but I've never played through any of them personally. I played a lot of those adjacent games, so I think it's super crazy that they pulled the exclusive. That's it. I mean, for PlayStation people, that's incredibly exciting.
Well, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. I started on the NES. I went Final Fantasy 3. Well, I played it as Final Fantasy 3, but it's really Final Fantasy 6. Is one of my favorite games of all time. I've replayed that game probably more than any other game. And so I've been with all the numbered ones. The only numbered that aren't the MMOs, but the single player ones. The only one I didn't play was 13. And I'm not really that surprised about the exclusivity with Final Fantasy VII Remake being a timed exclusive. I expect this to be a timed exclusive as well. I will say, though, I don't want all of the new Final Fantasy games to go in this direction. Like, they seem like they're all becoming action RPGs. And I wouldn't mind, like, a turn-based, like, next-gen looking Final Fantasy game, but I'll give it a shot. But the trailer, what impressed me more was the fact that they were announcing it and that there's time exclusivity more than the actual game itself.
And it didn't get leaked.
Yeah. There's something.
Exactly.
I'm excited.
Sony managed to shore up all of this stuff. Like none of it got leaked.
Yeah. I'm excited also because that means that the last time Final Fantasy was PlayStation exclusive, we got Lost Odyssey, which is in my top 5 games ever. So here's hoping for Lost Odyssey 2.
That'll be smart. I mean, there's a lot of people. I feel like there is a lot of people clamoring for a Lost Odyssey 2, and I think Microsoft is trying to make strides to get back into the Japanese market, and I just think it would just make sense anyway, even outside of it. I mean, the thing is, video games is so much bigger than the Japanese market now. Yeah. So, and people like Eastern games, so it's I don't feel like they really need to cater to it as much to want to bring something like Lost Odyssey 2 to the Xbox.
Yeah, exactly. Now there were a few other games announced, but we'll use this last 2 for our final games. We'll just talk about. Obviously, the first one's going to be SpiderMan. Everyone kind of saw it coming, that it was obviously going to be there, and then we got the news that kind of leaked in. It wasn't even leaked in. It was just they didn't even put it in their conference. It
was in their blog.
Yeah, SpiderMan is also going to be on the PS4, and they're also going to have a bundle pack where you can get both games for $69, I believe.
Well, the remaster of the original Spider-Man and Miles Morales for $70.
Yeah. Now, Sean, you made an interesting noise there.
Just a wonderful way to dilute.
Let us know why you just said that.
I'm against cross-gen games. I am. I've always been that way. I think the old hardware will hold back current, like next-gen hardware. I know people talk about hardware being like not really tapped into until later in the generation, but it doesn't. If you're already limiting if you have a canvas, right? You have a 5-foot canvas, but they're telling you can only use 3 feet of it. You're already limiting what you can do. If you have a 5-foot canvas, it might not be the best painting you could possibly make, but at least you have the room to expand and explore. You know what I mean? And that's what by making it a cross-gen game, they've limited the canvas. There's only so much you can do on that. And that's the same way I feel about Horizon Zero Dawn. I know I'm probably burying the lead a little bit, but that's another cross-gen game. I think exclusives should be, let third parties pick up the slack with the cross-gen games. Your job is to sell this console to your hardcore audience day one, and the way you do that is by making games that they can't play on the hardware they already have. They did it with PS2. You couldn't play any of those PS2 games on PS1. They did it with PS3. They couldn't play any of those games on PS2. They did it with PS4. They've done it 3 generations in a row. Now, all of a sudden, 2 of their biggest games are going to be held back by 7 and 8-year-old hardware by the time.
Now, I guess my question about that is, as most people might have heard already, or even saw in the headlines, that Sony had said or had felt like they had said in different ways that essentially there was no cross-gen. They're all about the next gen. That's what their games are designed for, and they touted it out. And in my opinion, I think that honestly might be a pure marketing ploy, yes, but also possibly a little reactionary to see how people were reacting to the backwards compatibility of Xbox. I'm not saying it was the only reason why they did that, but I also believe that, yes, they are trying to appease people and make people like they're getting something special with this console, which of course it is, because it's supposed to be a next generation console, but they also know that 120 million units of PS4 players, they are not all coming over at that same time, and they don't want to lose out on that cash.
Here's the thing. Here's the problem with that. It's like they had 100 million install when they launched the PS2. They had 100 million install when they launched the PS3. They had roughly 80 million when they launched the PS4. They're not strangers to leaving behind a certain people who don't jump in. So the people who jump in first should be rewarded with games that you can only play, experiences that you can only play. And it's not like they haven't done this before. I don't think this is a reaction to anything. I just think that Jim Ryan is just, he wants as much money as possible. And that's fine. That's their privy. It's a business. But when you come out and fucking say that, like, oh, we believe in generations, you're telling me that, great, I'm on board with that because I believe in generations too. And that's counter to what Microsoft said. And here's the funny thing is that Microsoft said, oh, for the first year or two, we're going to have, you know, games that can play up and down our platform, our thing of games. But the reality is that besides like Gears Tactic, which is already out on PC, so that doesn't really count as like a next gen game anyway. And like Halo was going to be the one, but who's to say what if Halo, by the time that comes out, if it's even going to still be on Xbox One? And like, so Sony wound up doing the exact same thing that they said that they were, that we believe in generations was supposed to counter, but they're doing it. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm furious about this because I'm pissed because, like, don't fucking lie. Don't give me your PR bullshit. Don't lie, and don't sit there and try to make people like because people were arguing. I had arguments about this. I've had arguments with you about this, Kyle, about how I think like making cross-gen games is a bad idea because it holds the games back. They can't see their full, they can never reach their full potential. They have no chance to reach their full potential by being cross-gen.
Now,
I wouldn't say I'm as passionate as either of you guys about this, but I will say it definitely kills my hype train when I'm like, oh, I can just play that on what I have. You know, I'm not going to wistfully walk past the Best Buy and find myself wandering along the electronics aisle wishing I had $500.
Yeah, and that's a big thing is I feel like what a lot of people are going to notice right away, and I feel like it's going to be more than ever with this generation to start the generation, is people are going to get their consoles, be really happy because they got the console, they've already got all the accessories, all the games, they're going to boot it up. They're going to love how fast it is. They're going to love the, you know, the boost in speed and performance in the games they already play. But I still feel, and this is to back us on, I still feel that you're not going to get, that's going to wear off real quick, and you're not going to get that wow factor of opening up a brand new game that you've never played before, and that's only on this brand new hunk of plastic that you just bought. And I feel like you're going to sit there and be like, wow, I'm missing that moment. I feel like every console generation, it didn't matter how crappy the game was. It was the fact that this game is only for this console, and it was made specifically for this console. I know when I got my Xbox One, Rise didn't do very well with reviews. As soon as I was
thinking about Rise too.
As soon as I booted it up, dude, I couldn't believe the graphics on this game. And it was like, whoa, like this is what next gen feels like.
Maybe not at launch because again, everything, with the exception of Demon Souls, which I still don't believe is next gen only. There are no like just next gen games for PlayStation. They're just not. And but I think that will come whenever Ratchet and Clank comes out. I think, yeah. But I don't think Ratchet and Clank is going to make. I think at best it'll be February before, or March to make the first quarter. But I don't think it's going to be like. But I think that's going to be the game that does that. But you're right. There isn't going to be that thing like where you go, like holy shit. Well, for me, the PlayStation, even Killzone Shadowfall looked amazing.
Yep.
But it wasn't until Infamous Second Son where I was like, will you look at this shit? And I still think that's one of the best games they've released this entire gen. But do you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be that wow moment, and at least not based on what I've seen. Like I know Demon Souls looks great, but it's also skipping a whole 10th generation and getting the animation looks a million times better. And
yeah.
So that definitely looks impressive. But it's I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah. And then obviously the last big thing was God of War 2 being teased, and obviously people went nuts for it, and it was expected. For me, it was a little bit expected. Like, if you want to end in a bang, you tease something that's at least, they say 2021. I don't believe this is a 2021.
I don't think it's any 2021 either.
I think this is a 2022 game.
No.
Yeah. There, with just that, with just like a logo, and you're telling me 2021, which is what, 13, like has that basically have like 14 months to get that out?
Exactly.
Nah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
I'm more likely to give birth in 2021 than they are to get that game out.
Now, the last thing I kind of want to talk about, because I believe I've got 8 minutes left on my timer, because I don't pay for Zoom, is reactionary from, let's start with Sean, reactionary on the PR nightmare. And if you want to kind of explain what's happened in PR, and again, there might not be a lot of people that know about this right now, but for people in the games media, and you know what, even the pre-ordering, and it's all over the place. Sean, so what's going on there?
Well, basically, Sony had a solid show. I still think it lagged a little bit in the middle, but they started strong, ended strong, had everything that we wanted except the pre-order information. So that was the first thing where it was like, okay. And then Jeff Keighley tweeted out that there's going to be pre-orders going live tomorrow, about 7 minutes before PlayStation did. And then basically a shit ton of retailers, basically every major big box retailer except Amazon, just put out pre-orders. And then Sony hasn't said a word about it. Then there's the whole, like I said, like we talked about before with the cross-gen games, they were like, everything after that event, the wheels just came off. It was like they were coasting really strong and they're like, yay, we did it. And then the wheels just fell off. And now there's a big like wreck. And it's just like people freaking out trying to get pre-orders. And then there's a lot of backlash against the cross-gen games, and justifiably so, because Microsoft got a ton of shit for it, and they should have gotten a ton of shit for it, and now Sony should get a ton of shit for it. You know what I mean? So I don't know, they have not, and they're not nearly as nimble as Microsoft apparently, because it's been what, 4 or 5 hours, and this has been going on for 5 hours. No one has said anything from Sony's on Sony's camp.
It's like they hit the bottom of the hill, hit the ramp, flew through the air, everyone was cheering, and then they smacked into the rocks 5 feet from the landing zone and just exploded.
And pretty much. That's really what I'm feeling too. It's like, and especially for, you know, when you have a console that is so desired and everyone just wants the date and the day they can pre-order, you could have done that and be like, hey guys, it's this specific date, because it gives people who, you know, let's say you're working right now while this conference is going on, and you signed up for all these 1.5 million different pre-order information lists, and you're supposed to get emails about it. It's supposed to tell you all in advance. And then you get home from work, you finally check your phone, and it's like, oh, sorry, everything's sold out because they just wanted a surprise. And I always have a problem with that. I always do like the ability for, you know, PlayStation, Microsoft, Nintendo to come out and be like, hey guys, this is the date it's coming out, this is the price, this is the date you can pre-order, be ready for that. Gives the retailers, and I worked in retail, I can't even imagine the amount of phone calls that GameStop employees and Best Buy employees had asking if they had the console. Can I pre-order it in store? Can I pre-order it online? And you know, most of these guys would have no idea, like they're base level employees, and you feel for them because it's like, man, come up with a plan. Like I feel like a plan is always the best, because I do feel like, you know, the rumor of Sony cutting consoles, and then we've got, oh, surprise pre-order. And you know what, I feel like, and again, I could be going on a limb, I could be blowing smoke up in people's asses, but I feel like it's an easy way for them to say, oh, sorry, we were actually sold out because so many people pre-ordered, and not anything to do with the console shortage.
No, I don't think that's what it is. I honestly think it's just poor communication on Sony's part. I believe, because here's the thing. Every time prior to this, they were like, pre-orders are live now.
Yeah.
And they could, and then that goes, then there's a media blast that goes to every single retailer to open up their to let that thing go live. They should have done that now. They should have done this at today. They should have been the pre-orders go up now, and then have everybody go and pre-order the thing. For some reason, they were like, we'll do this tomorrow, and they did it in a tweet. Even that's another thing. There's a guy from Sony who literally said, "Oh, we'll give you plenty of notice. It won't be in a tweet." And that was exactly what I was worried about. Is that like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to freak out. Like I don't want to know that. I just want you to tell me on this date you can pre-order the thing. I'm lucky I got in. I was literally on Twitter. And it's somebody like 50 seconds before I saw it, it said, Walmart has PlayStation. So I didn't even tell you guys first. I pre-ordered it first because I didn't want to even waste a second getting go. And I actually created an account because I didn't want to deal with forgot password because I've ordered from Walmart before. So I just created a whole new account and I was like, just so I could get in there and it's just, this is a bit the whole thing, everything, like all the communication, all the goodwill to me that they had, which say, oh, we're going to let you know, like all this, like we believe in generations, all of that went out the windows in the last 6 hours because none of it came to fruition.
It feels a little bit like they had the exact opposite to what happened last week with Microsoft. How the rails seemed to fall off for them on their big announcement, and they totally hobbled it together and ended up winning the day on that. And it just seems like Sony went the other direction and had the whole day seized and, kind of screwed the pooch.
For sure. I definitely agree on that. Now, we're almost out of time here, but I'm going to ask you guys one last question and real quick. If you could describe in 3 words, we'll start with you, Sean, what today for Sony did for them in terms of a console race, what would 3 words would you use?
In terms of the console race, ultimately, I think today's a speed bump. Like, I'm sorry, I know you wanted 3 words, so I would say just speed bump.
Mm-hmm. Sold T-shirts.
Yeah.
I think they sold a lot of T-shirts today. They're going to be fine. They got 70% of the market share between the two of them. Mm-hmm. It's, we'll see. This kind of stuff isn't decided until a year or 2 into the cycle. So we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for joining us for our first podcast. And this has been Locked. I totally forgot what we were
Locked on.
Locked on.
Locked on. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. And we'll see you again on episode 2.
All right.